All right, we are live. Hey, David.
Hey.
How are you?
Hey, hey.
Hey, hey. That was pretty easy. Hey, hey. I know people are going to file in here, and these streams are going to be published on Twitter, both of our feeds, plus on twitch.tv/basecamp. So if anyone wants to follow along, they can follow along there. This has been a couple weeks, and there's been tons of questions coming in about Hey. So we thought that, we've been answering tons of questions on Twitter and then also on support, but we thought it'd be fun to do a live stream. We did one of these when COVID started around remote working, and we thought it'd be nice to do one around Hey, and really specifically, not like tech support necessarily, but more product development ideas, engineering stack perhaps. People are really curious about that. Why we did this, why we did that. I also can pull up the account, like a demo account, if someone wants to see something about how we might do something or how something might look. I'm happy to share my screen there as well. But so we asked people on Twitter to tag their questions Q and Hey, and we got, I don't know, it looks like there's hundreds perhaps. So we'll just kind of start and pick a few. And I'm sorry if we don't get to all of them. We clearly won't, but we'll do the best we can here. So. Actually, David, this would be a good one for you to start with. Building for mobile, how do you leverage hybrid versus native? How do turbolinks work? Any frameworks used for Hey or Basecamp apps?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we have sort of a unique approach on how we build for 6 platforms at the same time with our small team. It's not possible to build for 6 platforms and the web. We're on Linux, Mac, Windows, Android, iPad, and iPhone at the same time. Can't build all of that with sort of bespoke apps for everything, in the sense that like everything has to be made from scratch. We just don't have that kind of personnel here at Basecamp. So we've built what we like to call a majestic monolith that sits in the middle, which is the main web application. And that main web application then gets embedded in various forms across the different applications. So on iPhone, for example, and on Android, we have some spectacular native apps where the whole inbox is totally native, how we pull things are native. But then when you go into an email, that's pulling the website, right? Emails are already HTML. So it feels natural, it feels normal, and it's really just that spectrum that we operate on. You can go the Linux app, for example, uses something called Electron. So there's the other desktop apps. That's a very thin wrapper. It gives it its own window, it gives it its own icon, but it's really the website inside of it. And then you go on further down the spectrum and you look at these mobile apps, and like, they're way more native, right? Like there's so much of the interactions that need to be slicker, so much of the animations, things we can't do like on the iPhone. Unless you do an app, you don't get notifications. Other platforms, we can use web notifications, so we can just use the web app there. But on the iPhone, you simply need a native app to do notifications. So it's this wide spectrum, but it's all using this majestic monolith. I tweeted out just a couple of, maybe 2 days ago. Time is a weird concept right now. The whole stack, everything we use, the database we use, the different kind of things that we use. So you can see what underpins all of these things. But on the native apps, iPhone, we use Swift. We use the native stuff. We Xcode, the whole thing. There's not another framework. I know there's Ionic. There's a bunch of other frameworks that people use. We don't do that. We have 2 iOS developers and 2 Android developers, and they work each with a designer. And that's it. There's 3 people who do both the iPad and the iPhone app. And there's 3 people who do the Android app. And like, you couldn't do that. If we were building everything from scratch for these, you can't do that with 3 people in the amount of time that we have. So that's the short story. We published a bunch of things. I'll link up some things about the general approach, the hybrid approach, where you are somewhere on that spectrum. Some screens are native and some screens are web. But this is really absolutely a killer productivity. I was going to say trick, but it's not a trick. This is just a better way to build this kind of software, in my opinion.
All right, here's one I really like, because a lot of people have been asking about this. What's your suggestion for managing the feed? The feed, for those who don't know, is a feature inside Hey where you basically put your newsletters, and instead of looking them one row at a time, they're kind of all open. You can scroll through them. So it says, after reading my newsletter, I want to mark it as read. The only way to see to do that is to move it to the inbox and apply a label. So what we're trying to do here is say, don't manage the feed. Don't worry about any of this stuff. You don't manage your Twitter feed. Like, you just scroll through it, and when you see it, it's done. You wait for the next thing to come in at the top. You don't manage your Facebook feed. You don't manage your LinkedIn feeds. You just kind of, they're feeds, it's information, and you scroll through it, and when you're done, you're done. New stuff comes in at the top, and you don't worry about the old stuff. So we're trying to take the burden of obligation off of you, which is hard because we're so used to having to deal with every single email that comes in. This is the problem with email for 20, 30, 40 years now. Every email that comes in, well, do I delete it? Do I archive it? Do I move it? Don't do anything. Just let it be. And this is where the weight begins to come off your shoulders after you get over the awkwardness of an adjustment, because this is an adjustment and it's a different way of thinking about this and a different mindset. But once you just say, like, I'm just going to let it be, let time take care of the rest, everything becomes lighter and easier, and there's less stress and less anxiety, and you just don't worry about managing things anymore. So that's the approach we're trying to take on a variety of different areas of Hey, but very specifically the feed. Because look, the stuff in the feed doesn't really matter anyway. If you miss a newsletter, oh well, right? It's not, this stuff is not urgent. This is not important. And just because someone landed it in your email app at 9:01 on a Tuesday morning doesn't mean you need to read it at 9:02. It just means that, like, they sent it at 9:01. So maybe you read it in 3 days, maybe you don't read it at all. I miss things all the time in my feed. No big deal. Nothing in there should be so important that if you miss it, you're going to feel bad. It's a different approach, and that's kind of how we're approaching this.
I think it goes to the broader issue here, which is we're trying to reform inbox zero. This idea that you need to process everything immediately because you want inbox zero, right? One of the main changes for me using Hey for now many months is that I just deal with so many fewer emails because so much of it gets sent somewhere else. For example, the feed. I only check the feed like once every couple of days. It's not something that I check 5 times a day, which when I was running inbox zero, I used to use Gmail, and I ran inbox zero on Gmail. And I was so proud of getting to that like screen where it's all empty, right? Which meant that I had to deal with everything right away. So, and newsletter would come in and I'm like, I got to read it. I got to read it right now because otherwise I'm not going to get to inbox zero, because if I put it aside, like, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to read it right now. And I didn't need to read that newsletter at 10 a.m., right? I like to read newsletters sort of at night when I'm just sort of catching up on things. The same thing with the paper trail. All these notifications that just come in that I just need to have somewhere. I don't need to react to them right away. Huge difference. So I think we still have some tweaking to do, though. Jason and I have been talking about some of these issues, like how quickly does your inbox, for example, flow? For some people, it flows very quickly. Jason and I, we get hundreds of emails a day, right? So things flow very quickly. The river is very fast. For other people, the river is slower, and there's some legitimate concerns there about like what you see and what's in your face, and we're going to continue tweaking all of this. I mean, literally, we've been out for what, like 11 days? Gmail has been here for 16 years. And there's what, probably, I don't even know, hundreds of people working on it. So we're 50 people. We've been here for 11 days. We're going to listen to everything. And part of this, I think, with the whole listening thing is that we designed Hey for us. There were not like a bunch of focus groups where we went like, oh, what do you not like about your email apps? And this was what 50 people at Basecamp thought would make a good V1. Not the final thing, didn't get everything right, didn't have every bullshit. We've gone back on a couple of things where we're like, do you know what? Hadn't considered that. I'll take the next question because it flows straight into this, which is, what are you going to do about signatures? So we went into this with all the indignation that I've been built up after 20 years of using emails and looking at these huge blocks of legalese of like, hey, if you receive this in error, then okay, now there's this much signature and there's like this much email, not proportionate. This doesn't feel right. But we went in like hard, as we often do, with the most sort of brutal way through it, which is, all right, you can't do it. No soup for you. Okay. And then someone called it out on Twitter and they said, look, you know what? Here's a bunch of legitimate reasons for why someone would want a signature. Maybe they want their pronouns in there. Maybe they want their time zone in there. Maybe they want their position at a company in there. And we went like, oh yeah, actually, that totally makes sense. It's totally reasonable. It's totally compatible with this idea that like, yeah, we're not going to make these huge signatures that have social media icons and everything else that's filling up the net with footer crap. But we can do the other thing. And there's a bunch of that with Hey. We have a core vision for what the product should do, but we didn't consider everything. And we're going to list everything, and we've already changed a bunch of things, and I'm sure we'll continue to change a bunch of things. But then the other thing too is when you launch, like we have 120, I don't know, 5,000 people who've signed up for it already. Most people have relatively strong opinions about email because they've used it for a long time, right? They're used to a certain way. They had a certain workflow that they built up. So they're going to come to Hey, and some things are going to be weird. Some things are going to be like, this is foreign, and sometimes the foreign part is good right away, and other times it's like an acquired taste, right? It takes a little while to get used to. So, I mean, I'm saying both things at the same time. Both I'm saying, hey, give Hey 5 minutes. It's strange at first. If after 5 minutes, or I mean, 5 days, please, not literally 5 minutes, but 5 days, you still go like, do you know what? Here's some concerns to have. At Hey or support@hey.com. We listen to all of it, and we're going to incorporate a bunch of it.
Yep. I'll jump into, I'm just kind of going down the list here. What's one feature you've gotten the most requests for, which you won't be bringing to Hey? Well, won't and forever are hard to deal with because who knows, right? But I think a lot of people have been asking for like POP accounts and IMAP and whatnot, like basic, can we check other accounts? That's kind of come up a lot. And we're not building an email client. And Hey handles emails in ways that's not really backwards compatible with other systems. For example, in Hey, you can get an email and you can screen that sender out so you'll never hear from them again. Like that's not compatible really with IMAP, like backwards compatibility. Like what do you do with those emails on other services? Do you mark them as read? Do you delete them? There's a whole bunch of things that don't really line up. And so we're moving forward. We're not stuck in the past. IMAP and POP, great ways to check other systems, but those other systems all are very traditional systems and they all kind of work the same way. Hey is a new take on email. It is compatible with any email service in that you can send and receive emails to any other service in the world. But the way we think about email is very, very different. So we're not going to, when I say we're not, like for the foreseeable future, which could be forever, we could change our mind in 3 years. I can't make permanent guarantees, but one way or the other, but we are not here to let you check Gmail with Hey. It's just not the kind of thing that we want to do. It's not the kind of time we want to spend. As David's been talking about, we have a small team, relatively small team, and we're version 1, and we've got 1,000 things we want to do, and everyone else wants us to do 1,000 different things as well. We have to think about what makes sense for the product, what we want to invest our time in, where we want to take this thing, what we want it to be, what we want it to feel like, what we want it to mean, and also understand that saying no is going to push some people away who want something, understandably, but we're just not going to go there. We're not going to make this an email client for checking other services. It's not part of our reason for existing. We're trying to differentiate by doing things in a quite a different way at a variety of different levels, and that's what we want to focus our energy on. Because if we have to take an email from other services, all of a sudden it slows down development and innovation on other areas of our product because we have to make sure things work with other things. We just don't want to go there. It's just not our current interest.
One caveat to this, I'll just say, in case you're listening, they don't know how the system works. You can get your stuff in by forwarding. Hey takes forwards in, and we send forwards out. So that's sort of the base way of doing it. And then we've already committed to doing custom domains, which is the way you can get sort of a not at hey.com address. But custom domains, I saw another question about that. Yeah. Pretty complicated if you want to do it right. It used to be very easy because email is just text and you could write whatever you wanted in the from field. Now, problem with that was a lot of people abused that and they wrote whatever they wanted in the from field and people would send spam as me. I remember, like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, I'd get all these replies from people who were like, why are you sending me this shit? And I was like, I didn't send you this. Someone just put my name into the from field. Now, thankfully, email has leveled up since then, and there's a bunch of things to now verify that the sender is actually sending from a domain that they own. But that means that things like supporting custom domains is a lot harder. There's a litany of acronyms and DKIM this and DMARC that you have to get right in order to ensure that deliverability happens. That when we send email as david@dhh.dk, the recipient goes like, well, does this person actually own DHH.dk? There's systems to look that up. They're quite complicated. the setup process is quite complicated. There's a lot of hand-holding sometimes can be needed. And if we want to support thousands of customers doing this, we need a streamlined system that does not require like an hour walkthrough for everyone. Like that doesn't work. There are other email systems that do require an hour walkthrough, and they're usually heavily guarded and limited in terms of how many people that they can let in. We want Hey to be sort of a mass system, at least mass within the who wants to pay $100 a year for email. But that's, I mean, already 125,000 people have signed up for it, right? We can't spend an hour with each one out of 125 people or 25,000 people. So.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let's say, who led the UX and UI design of Hey? Did the team do user research as part of the process? The UI and the UX is pretty much led by me and Jonas, who's our design team lead here at Basecamp. We don't do user research when we build new products. Version 1 is ours. It's what we want to exist in the world. And the 50 people at Basecamp are the people who we talk to and who we've used this with. We've been using Hey internally for, 6 or 8 months now, basically. David and I certainly have. So, there's a lot of people at Basecamp that are using Hey. We're using Hey months and months ago. We've got lots of internal feedback, and that's enough. We know it's not everybody. We know it's not perfect. We know there's holes. We look at things, we go, we should make that better. And there's another question coming up. I'll just kind of bunch these two together in a second. But we build what we want to exist in the world for V1. And after that, and this is the same way we've done every product, Basecamp, Backpack, Campfire, High-Rise, you name it. And after that, as David mentioned, we hear from tons of people. We listen to a lot of people. We'll eventually do a lot of customer interviews, and Ryan Singer will probably lead that. And we'll learn a lot of things. But version 1 is ours. That's how we do it. And we put it out there, and then we see what other people think, and then we adjust from there. Now, as far as this other thing that I want to mention here, which is another question about my main concern with Hey is that some senders might send transactional messages, which would normally go in the paper trail, but also important ones, which would go in the inbox. How do you handle that? And this is a thing that we knew was a problem. Other people now know it's also a problem, but we decided that we're going to stick with the simplest possible model to begin with for version 1. So this isn't like we missed. So let me step back. With Hey, for those who don't know, you can designate one of 3 places for an email to land from a specific sender. And that sender has a specific email address. So you could say any email from bill@apple.com goes to the inbox, or it goes to the paper trail, or it goes to the feed. But if Bill sends me 2 different kinds of email, I can't distinguish, or Hey can't currently distinguish which one should go into which place. You have to pick one of the 3 places. Now, again, we know that's not ideal. It's not the best possible solution. But when you come out with something brand new, like we did with Hey, we want it to basically be a push button system, the simplest possible model, the simplest possible version of something. One email address, basically most of the time, where should that go? And there's going to be some outliers. There's going to be some blurriness. There's going to be some places where things can maybe go in 2 places. But really, we don't want to set up a system that's super complicated initially, where it's like, well, it can go here, but if you set up this condition, it can go there. Maybe you set this condition up too, it can go there. Then you end up with Gmail mail rules, which are intimidating, complex, and certainly we could have made them simpler, but we just don't want to start there. So we're starting with what we started with, which we know there are problems with in some cases. That's inefficient in some places, and sometimes it's kind of hard to decide where to go, but it's still the right place to start. Like David said, we're 11 days in, with a lot of neat stuff coming up, a lot of great ideas coming up, a lot of things we knew we wanted to do, but we couldn't get them done in V1. V1 is not all of your ideas. It's simply the ones that made the cut and the ones that make the most sense to differentiate the product initially. So we're not just building what everyone's built in the past. So yes, in time, we will figure out better ways to handle senders that might be sending different kinds of email from the same address. Like a lot of companies will have one address, and they'll send you an invoice, and they might send you a product update, and they might send you marketing emails. Like, where do those go? It's a really good question. So in general, by the way, what I tend to do is, if I'm not sure where something goes, I put it in the inbox, and then I'll bundle that sender up so they only take up one line. And then you can manually move individual emails from the inbox to the paper trail or the feed. So if there's something in there I know I can't miss, then it goes to the inbox for sure, and I can selectively move things out if I need to. That's kind of my current process, but we recognize that's not necessarily the best long-term approach, but it's the right now approach.
I think one other thing there are actually a bunch of companies who smartly use different email addresses for their mailing list and for, say, their invoices or their receipts. This is something you learn when you use the screener. You learn how people are emailing with you. And what I've learned is it's quite common, actually, for people to use separate email addresses. And when they do, which I think is a great pattern, that you have billing@basecamp.com be separate from, say, newsletter@basecamp.com. Such that those things can go in different areas. That works. The other trick you can use is if you are getting something from someone where they're sending you both a bunch of marketing emails that you don't necessarily really want and a bunch of stuff that is important, unsubscribe from those marketing emails. Every company is required by law to allow you to unsubscribe from those things. Sometimes they subscribe you to them in advance. I don't think that's a good pattern generally, but if they do that, just unsubscribe and then you'll get just what you need. Most of the time though, you're gonna get it from different email addresses and that works well.
Cool. Can I take this next one real quick?
Yeah, go.
Which is something a little bit similar to something that was asked earlier. So is the intended action when, well, let me rephrase this. In Hey, at the bottom of the inbox, there's a section called Previously Seen. And this guy's wondering, do you just leave stuff there? Do you want to delete it? Do you archive? What's the intended purpose of that section? The intended purpose is to help you just chill out, truly. Like, this is getting back to the feed part again. Again, going back into history, email has always left you with obligations. Every email you get, you look at it, now what do I do? Well, you don't just look at it. You got to do at least two things with most emails, and traditionally, which is you look at it and you act. Maybe it's a reply. Maybe you archive it. Maybe you do something else with it. Maybe you star it. Like, most things you just see and you don't need to do anything else. And Hey takes that approach that just you look at it and it drops down into Previously Seen. That's now a log. It's an archive of everything you've done recently. So if you need to get back to something pretty quickly, you can. Versus, let's say you had something in Gmail that you archived and you wonder where it was. Like, well, it could be an archive. It could be in your inbox. It could be in sent mail. It could be all over the place. With Hey, it just drops down to Previously Seen. And over time, that pushes itself away. So I know this is a hard habit to break, because especially with Gmail, it's trained us to want to archive everything, to want to clean up everything, to want to put everything away. Just leave it. Let time do that work for you. So yes, that is the intended purpose. You look at something, it drops down, just forget about it. You're done. If you need to get back to it, it's right there. And over time, it will just move away. And it's really liberating after you can get over the hump of recognizing there's a different behavior here we're going for. All right, Dave, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, so there was a question here about having support with actual humans for an email service seems unique. Are you planning to lean into that more heavily in your marketing or whatever? This is a great point that we've been dealing with lately because we've been making Basecamp for the past 16 years. And a key feature of Basecamp is that if you have a problem, you write in and you very quickly hear back from a human who's empowered to help you. Either help you with billing or help you understand the product, or if you find an issue, to escalate that quickly. And you know what? I've been using Gmail for 16 years. I don't think I've ever written Google, because I don't even think that that's a thing you can, right? And some of this is about business models. I think Gmail, I don't even know how many users they have. They probably have 1 billion users or whatever you get at Google scale. You probably can't answer 1 billion people. They can't just write you. So you make it very hard to find that someone can contact you. And if they do find that, they expect a reply back in, like, I don't know, a week. Maybe it works differently. I'm just going off my perceptions here, and clearly other people's perceptions as well, where we've tried to think, like, could we do this? Could we offer email where if you have problems or you need help or something, you can write and the human will get back to you quickly? Do you know what? It's actually still an unsettled question, because even at $99 a year, like, that's about $8 a month. Running a support department like we do with a bunch of people that we pay very well is pretty expensive. And there are all these sort of ways you can try to quantify that, but we're going to try. We're going to try. We're going to try to make a profitable service where we can write people back really quickly. And hopefully that does feel different, that we can offer the same kind of quick support that we offer in Basecamp for Hey. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised if they do need to write us. Please, this is not an invitation to just generally write us. Especially right now, we process something like I don't know, thousands of emails just yesterday, and we're just standing like this against the sort of the tidal wave right now. So, but if you do really have a legit problem issue, do write in. Feature requests are very welcome too. They kind of get funneled over into a separate track where we can review them at a calm time. But yeah.
What's your vision for enterprise Hey adoption? So, it's funny, I'll take you guys back a bit. When we first started to build Hey, we originally weren't even building an email app. We were building more of a CRM style app. We were going to build a new version of HighRise back then, a couple of years ago. Eventually, we realized we wanted to build an email thing. But it initially started out as a business email tool. There was no personal version at all, which is essentially what people are signing up for today at an @hey.com email address. Although people are using it for business already, but essentially it's priced for an individual user. But as we start building this thing, we're like, I want this for my own email. Like, why should I only have these great things for business work or business email? Like, I want this for all my email. So we kind of decided to take it in two tracks. It's the same product. So we actually internally at Basecamp are already using the business version, the work version. We're kind of calling it Hey You for the individual version and Hey Us for the business version, sort of our internal lingo right now. But we're using it. And the iOS app and the Android app support multi-user business accounts already. The web app does. We're just hiding some of those things right now as we're finishing them up. So ideally, the real business model here for us ultimately is probably business is going to subsidize a lot of personal use, because it is, as David mentioned, it's hard. It's actually at $99 a year, even though people think email is free traditionally, like even $99 a year, it can be pretty hard to make this work unless you have a lot of customers. So the business side is, I think, going to help make that even more possible. As far as enterprise goes, like, we're not interested in enterprise anything. We're interested in helping small, medium-sized businesses. I don't envision a company with hundreds of people getting on board with Hey, although they certainly could. But I think like the sweet spot's going to be, one person to 50 to 60 to 100 employees, somewhere in there. That feels like a really, really, really good fit for the kinds of stuff we're doing with the work version, which is not just multi-user email, but there's collaborative features in there. There's a whole bunch of really interesting stuff that's going to come, and we can't wait to show you. But that's really it. It's not about enterprise. We don't care about enterprise. We care about small, medium-sized businesses. So that's ultimately the focus there. But yeah, we're very amped up to get this out because we're using it. It's huge for us. David and I use it all the time to go back and forth behind the scenes on individual email threads. It's really, really handy, and can't wait to show it to you. Want to pick one? So
let me try to hit a couple of quick ones here. There's some questions about how we built Hey in terms of the front end. When I posted this thing about the Hey stack, I said like, oh, here's all the things we use. We use MySQL for the database. We use Elasticsearch for search. We're on AWS and Kubernetes for the hosting. And then for the front end, we use Stimulus and we use Turbolinks, and then we use NewMagic. And NewMagic is kind of the cover for a bunch of new techniques that we've been developing to do Hey in the way we want to do Hey, which is this very HTML-centric approach. I remember when we first started tweeting about this, and I tweeted that like our main JavaScript bundle was like 40K compressed. People went like, what do you mean? Like, that's the first screen, or is there something else? No, it's about 40K compressed. We have a thing for our editor called Tricks that's another 40K, but still 40K for a gzip is tiny. And people are like, you're not supposed to do this. If you build an app like this, you're supposed to use, I don't know, React or Vue or some other framework for a full single page application. We're not doing any of that. We're using an HTML-centric approach that takes offspring in Stimulus and in Turbolinks, but it's full of a bunch of new stuff. We were going to show it all. I was going to show it all at RailsConf. It was going to be my keynote showing all this stuff off, but then a pandemic got in the way. We took a breather and paused to give our employees sort of some rest and not add stress on top of all this. Now we've been focused on getting Hey out, and I think this is the right sequence. This is the same sequence we used for Ruby on Rails in 2004. People just care more about technology when they can see how it's used. If I had gone out before we'd even launched Hey, like, hey, here's a bunch of new techniques and you can use those, people are like, oh, okay, maybe they'd be interested. Here's a popular application. People really like it. It's fast, it's responsive, it's all these things. Now people are interested in how it's built. So I think that's the right order to go. One other question. There's been questions about accessibility. We've worked on making Hey accessibility from the get-go. Michael Berger, who works at Basecamp, is our accessibility specialist. He's been reviewing it as part of the QA process. We still have more work to do. We're putting out a thing on the website shortly, maybe even later today. I don't know when it's going out. Just sort of reiterating our commitment to making Hey accessible. This is pretty difficult work in some regards. It's not that easy. We've been doing a bunch of it from the ground up. There's still some work to do, but we'll have it wrapped up pretty soon, I think.
Any thoughts on scheduling emails? I love being able to send an email at a later time so it reaches the recipient at a reasonable hour. Yes, we would love to do that as well. This is one of those examples of course, like, yeah, we should absolutely do this. But it didn't make the 1.0 cut. Why didn't it make 1.0 cut? Because it's not a fundamental core concept of the product. It's not that differentiated, but we will definitely want to do something like that later at some point. We even talked about this with Basecamp. This is a big problem we have with Basecamp, which is that if someone decides to, because they didn't work on Thursday, they work on Sunday instead or something, and they post something, you can pull other people into work on a Sunday when you didn't mean to. It's like, I had time on Sunday to write this, so I did, but I didn't want everyone else to be pulled in because I happened to do it on Sunday because I took a day off during the week. So I'd be able to schedule something for Monday instead would make a lot of sense. So definitely we want to do a lot of things like that. There's so many things we want to do. I'm so excited to like get back into product development. The last 2 weeks have just been like holding everything together. We've had the Apple situation. The thing we knew this was a great product, but we didn't know it was going to resonate as much as it has. So we're just under a lot of weight right now, trying to answer over 2,000. I think we did 2,000 emails yesterday, actually, with customer service.
Closer to 3,000, I think.
Okay. So everyone's
and
in.
That's not even factoring in all the
Twitter stuff. Yeah. So like,
yep.
Everyone's in here. We're just doing. So hopefully in the next week or so, we can start to get back into product development and bring everybody some really cool stuff that's sort of just behind the 1.0 line that we didn't get in there. Let's see.
There's a question here about recruiting. So we went out as part of the celebration that we've been allowed to publish Hey in the App Store, was that it removed a bunch of uncertainties around Hey. So number of years ago, we went like, do you know what? We're going to go all in on Basecamp. It's going to be the only thing we're going to do, and that we can do with the team that we have. And that's worked out quite well. And then we started working on Hey, and we went like, do you know what? I don't know what happens when this thing launches, right? We kept pacing ourselves and going, you know what? I really like it. Jason really likes it. A bunch of people at Basecamp really likes it. But I have no idea. We don't have any idea. You can think you've made the greatest product in the world. You push it out there and like, nothing happens. This happens to me all the time with publishing or with tweets. I think like, oh my God, I'm so fucking clever. I wrote this down and it's a great piece, and like just crickets, right? And then I'll write something down and I'm like, it's kind of a throwaway thing, and it just takes off. You just don't know. You have to ship to know. So we've been quite, I think, conservative, which we've always been running Basecamp for the past 20 years. Very conservative in like, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We've invested a bunch. This is going to be a great V1, but maybe there's like 2,000 people who's interested. Maybe there's 5,000 people that's interested. That'd be okay. We built a great system for ourselves, and now 5,000 people get to use it. We could never have guessed that 125,000 people would show up in 2 weeks. It's actually kind of funny because on the technical side, we did all these projections, right? Like you have to do something like, how big should the system be? How much capacity are you building for? And like the first thing was like, okay, for the first several months, like 20,000. I mean, wow, that would be something. And if we totally oversize the system such that like in a year or whatever, we can do 250,000. Like now we have some orders of magnitude to deal with. And then like in 2 weeks, 125,000 people show up. So now that that's happened, we're going to do a bunch of stuff on the technical side. And we also got to do a bunch of stuff on the human side. We've already brought on 5 temporary people to help with all the support burden. We may bring on even more if this sort of keeps up. And then we have to get a bunch of other roles filled in, because Hey now is cemented. It's something we're going to be working on for the next 10 years, maybe 20 years. I don't know. A bunch of things that we've been working on Basecamp for 16 years, all sorts of new ideas. We're going to work on this for a long time. It's going to need some more people. So basecamp.com/jobs right now says like no listings open or whatever. That's not really true. Internally, we have listings open. We have to write the job openings. We have to do all the diligent work. It often takes us upwards of 2 months do a hire doing it the way we do. It's kind of a long process, but if you sign up on the mailing list there to be notified, as soon as we have an opening, it's going to be there. And I've already tweeted out we plan to hire in security, in programming, in design, in support, and a bunch of other areas of the business. We're looking at getting someone. Now, this is still us hiring, right? It's not like we're going like, oh, we're going to hire 300 people. No, I mean, let me just set some expectations there. When we say like, oh, we're going to hire like crazy, that may be like 8 people or 5 people or whatever the number is. I think the most we ever hired in 1 year was in 2011, where I think 7 people joined Basecamp that year, maybe 8. So those are the orders of magnitude. But anyway, yes.
All right, this is a good one. So I'm going to just read this. John bought John at hey.com. A year later, he decided he will no longer subscribe and canceled. When can another John buy that John at hey.com? And what will you do with past emails and subscriptions and newsletter signups made by the first one who will keep showing up in an inbox? Great question. This is something we thought a lot about. If you pay for a year of Hey, you own that email address for life, even if you cancel a day later and never pay us another penny. We will never recycle that name. That is yours forever. And we even let you set up forwarding. So we will forward emails from, I'm just, again, using his example, John at hey.com. That's someone's actual email address, but
works at Basecamp.
Works at Basecamp, so I feel okay about that. So any email sent to John at hey.com forever will go wherever you want them to go. So that is our promise. And that is a really fundamental, important promise for a variety of reasons. On the security level, it's important because you don't want someone else getting your password reset emails a year and a half down the road. It's also just a fundamental human promise that if you've been using this email address for a year and you paid us for it, it's yours. You own it now, essentially. And we're not going to ever create any scenario where you're surprised because it doesn't work anymore. Now, on the trial basis, when you sign up for Hey and try it for 14 days, if you choose not to pay after that, we will recycle that email address between 30 and 45 days or so later, I believe is
30 days.
Number. 30 days. So
yep.
That will be recycled. So we can't have people like signing up to try it for a day and then like amazing email addresses are gone forever. Right. So we will recycle those. Also, the other thing we do is if you decide to cancel, on the cancellation screen, when you're all done, your account is canceled, you can come back to that screen and download your data and export your data and set up your forwarding. You can do all this after you cancel, which is very, very different from most services. When you cancel, you're locked out. So you better get your stuff out of there before you cancel. But if you hadn't thought about it until then you're SOL. So like we're making sure that we're making this stuff as friendly as possible without lock-in, letting you take your stuff even after you've canceled and forwarding email forever for you after you've canceled, as long as you paid for a full year. Now, if you pay for 7 months and you quit and you ask for a refund, you don't get to keep your email address forever. You got to pay for a full year. So just $100 or $99 and it's yours forever. So that's how we're doing that.
I think that's also leads into a lot of people have been asking for a monthly subscription. And I totally get it. $100 for an email address is a lot. And there are people where they would want to do this if they could pay on a monthly basis, but it's actually quite complicated, right? We want to make this process a promise that what you buy when you buy Hey, it's not just a subscription. You're buying essentially a product. You're buying this email address. That one is yours now, whether you continue to subscribe or not. We can't really sell these email addresses for $8, right? Like the business model is already difficult in the way we want to run it and the way we want to do support and all that stuff at $99. We can't make these promises that the email address is yours for life for $8. So that's why we've been we don't have a straight shot, even though I like the idea that someone could essentially pay for this on a monthly basis, because I totally sympathize with the idea that like, hey, I have $8. I can pay you $8 a month. I can't pay you $100 up front. Maybe there's some way we can do it. I don't know. We've been trying to think about like, is there a legal way where you can sell someone something and then they pay it off over a year or something? But it's pretty complicated, right? So we got to start somewhere. What we've started with, there's one price, which leads into this other thing that like, there are other areas of the world, like in South America or in India, where we have a lot of interest from, go like, do you know what? The exchange rate or whatever is just difficult. $99 is a lot. Do you do international pricing? And what we've gone out and said, like, we want to look into that, right? Like, Hey is one of those services where I could totally see us doing local versions. In fact, I'm Danish, right? So I've been talking to some people in Danish about the fact they're excited about Hey. And I was just talking today, and I need to get back to this person, about hej.dk. So hey in Danish is hej, H-E-J. And I was like, this would be a wonderful way, like if you could do the local version of hey in that language, set up a thing and allow, you can do then localized pricing. Because the other thing is we charge in US dollars, right? So even if you're in Europe, there's an exchange rate there that fluctuates. This is sort of the same issue we've had with Basecamp over the years. If the dollar gets stronger, then hey becomes more expensive, and versus what vice there. Maybe we can set it up in such a way we can charge in local prices. That's a better way to do some of these things, and perhaps offer different prices, like a lot of services do. Like if you get Netflix in India, it's a different price than if you get Netflix in the US. So we want to look into a bunch of those things. But again, we're 50 people. We don't have like international offices in all sorts of different ways of the world. There's so much work you have to do that just to get the taxes right. We've been doing the tax work for hey for Europe with collecting VAT, which itself was sort of new to us. We've been selling small business software to corporations, and that's been exempt for, or is exempt for, collection of VAT in Europe. Now we're selling something where individuals are buying it for themselves. You have to collect VAT in Europe. And we've had to sort of deal with it. How we present that? We're used to saying like, hey, the service is $99, right? Then we started collecting taxes. Now you can't necessarily just say it's $99. Like I think someone from the UK wrote me and like $118 showed up on my bill. I thought it was $99, and I was like, how is this possible? Is this the exchange rate? And something like, oh shit, it's the VAT. So we have to do a bunch of work there to be able to roll this out. We've got to start somewhere. For us, the US is by far and away the largest market. So of course that's where we start. This is where the company is founded and based, and so forth. But I want to explore all of it.
Yeah, I like this one. Now that you've launched, is there anything you wish you would have done differently, whether that's in approach or execution? So in the product, no. Outside of the product, yes. Something we did not anticipate was the enthusiasm for it and the excitement for it. And a lot of people have been asking, can I sign up to be notified if a specific email address becomes available because someone doesn't pay after their trial? Because again, we recycle the trial email addresses. So what I wish we would have done is set up basically a way to, like a waiting list, way to subscribe to an individual email address and say, if this becomes available, if this recycles, notify me at my other email address so I can come and snap it up and buy hay. A lot of people have been asking for this, and it's actually been pretty time consuming on the support side. We have to say, no, we don't have a waiting list right now. I would have been great to point someone to a list. And also it just would have been a great little fun thing to do. But we didn't do that. We didn't anticipate that. We didn't think this would be a thing. We thought it would take off a lot slower perhaps. So I wish we would have thought that through. It would have helped everybody. It also would have been good for business, obviously, as well. So that's the one thing for me that I wish we would have done ahead of time.
I wonder, because I've been trying to figure out like how we could actually do this, and we're stuck between someone's really excited, they want john@hey.com, and on the other side, like we have to respect the privacy of everyone who signs up.
Sure.
Prospective customers or paid customers, right? Like we don't devolve whether someone has signed up for Basecamp. We don't devolve whether they're paying, what plan they're on. Like that's your private information, right? Email is a little weird because like, so if you're like, I want john@hey.com, you could write John. Don't write John. John actually works at Basecamp. He's not going to give up john@hey.com. I'm just giving you an example, right? You could write, like there's nothing we can sort of do to stop that. But it's sort of been, it's been different. And I've seen some mad stuff. First, we saw that people were selling invitations. And I'm like, what do you mean selling invitations? They're on eBay and people were bidding them up. I don't know if any of them sold, but this was sort of, again, people accuse us, oh, you're just doing this scarcity for marketing. It's like, no, we're trying to keep our head above water here. We let people in too fast, actually. For the good of our organization, we let in people too fast. A lot of people at Basecamp, they've not worked at a comm company for the past 2 weeks. And this is something that's like very near and dear to our heart, that we run a comm company. It's not been a comm company for the past 2 weeks. And part of that was because we were trying to get this out, right? We were trying to deal with this Apple situation and then deal with all the interest. And we were just, we hadn't anticipated any of that on that level. So it's been quite difficult. And if we had opened up everything on the first Monday we went up, we would just have melted down, right? Like, it's just like, you gotta flatten things here such that you have a bunch of people want to come in. You can't do it all in one day. So we had the invitation system. Unfortunately, that meant that, well, fortunately and unfortunately, a lot of people were excited about it. That's great. Then there was all this selling. That's not great. There were people doing cyber squatting, as the technical law term is. Like, I'm always like, whenever you stick cyber in front of something, you know it's a legal term here, right? There's cyber squatting going on where people were signing up for addresses they had no intention to buy or to keep or to use, simply for the purpose of reselling. We've added a thing in our policies that we forbid that. If we get any credible reports with evidence for that, we will investigate. And if we conclude that someone is cyber squatting, that is signing up for domains with the intention to sell, it's not about whether you want that name or not. Someone asked me, can I sign up for Cisco at hey.com because that's what my friends called me? Yeah, totally. You can sign up for that. That's fine. What you can't do is sign up for John at hey.com and then go around to all the Johns on Twitter who said like, oh, I'm excited about Hey, and DM them and say, hey, do you want to buy this for $5,000? If we get any reports, like, and we have gotten quite a few reports, we will cancel those things. And the person who reports the credible evidence, if we conclude the investigation to be accurate, is going to have the opportunity to get it. And they're not going to be paying $5,000 for it. They're just going to sign up as anyone else would. So that's it. Like, it's kind of tricky, right? And I think that I was actually surprised that like people cared that much about getting it, which we really shouldn't have been, because someone just tweeted me saying, Gmail has 1.5 billion users. So if you sign up for Gmail today, you're gonna get like, whatever, smart dude 99642. That one is probably taken already. But whatever you want to come up with, it's got to be sort of a complicated handle. It often involves numbers because that's the only way to get through the names. I mean, 1.5 billion, most things are taken. Hey is quite different, especially because it's a paid service. We're not going to have 1 billion customers, right? Like, if we have tens of thousands of customers after this is all said and done, that's probably it, right? Which means that a bunch of the good names, meaning your first name or your first name plus your last name or your favorite handle, they're going to be available. Like, you can legitimately buy it. This is one of the things we offer. This is one of the things you get when you charge $99 for email. So I totally get it. We were taken aback about it. It was surprising, but we're doing the best we can to make it fair without violating anyone's privacy, and hopefully it'll shake out over time. And we're in the sort of eye of the storm right now, and things are going to sort of level out. So
I want to answer like a bunch of questions at once, which is basically, what's the time frame on X or Y? We don't have any time frames except for there's a few things coming this year. Hey for Work officially is coming this year, and custom domains are officially coming this year. Custom domains could be on personal, could be on business, where you got to work some stuff out. We haven't made final decisions on these things. But as far as like all these other features, what about a calendar? What about this? What about that? Like, we don't even know internally. So we don't have internal roadmaps. We work 6 weeks at a time. And if you want to figure out or learn more about how we work, you want to go to basecamp.com/shapeup, SHAPEUP. We literally work 6 weeks at a time. So we have a couple things that we know we want to do this year, but I don't know, is it going to be 3 months from now? Is it going to be 5 months from now? We only have, 6 months left in the year. So it's got to be within those 6. But that's it. So there's so many things that we are going to bleed into the next year and the year after that, because we only have so much time to do things, and we have to figure out what makes the most sense right now versus later. How much, what's our appetite for taking on some of these projects? How exhausted are we? Like, do we want to take on really hard, complicated things right now? Probably not, because we're tired. Do we want to take on high value, easier things? Probably. So we're going to kind of have to shuffle the deck here, lay a model on the table, and figure some of this stuff out. But we truly don't have roadmaps internally to share, even externally. So we just don't know. But calendar, would love to tackle a calendar at some point. Don't know when that might be, if ever. But yeah, there's a lot. So anytime anyone's asking when, we just truly don't know. Like family plans, we would love to offer family pricing. Absolutely. And we have some really interesting ideas around families being able to share things together. But it's real work. We got to figure it all out. We don't have an ETA on it. We just know that it's something we would like to do at some point, but it also doesn't mean it's going to happen. We hope it will, but other things may jump in line before that. We'll have to kind of see how that goes.
Yeah, I think in the 20 years I've been writing public software, I have a hard time remembering when I ever was like, oh, I'm so glad I announced that feature in advance and committed myself to a timeline. The history of it, we've done this several times in the history of Basecamp, and like almost every time we've regretted it, right? So the fact that we've gone out and say like, we're doing Hey work and we're doing custom domains and we're doing it this year is already like, we're gonna do the work. I mean, clearly there's a lot of demand for that, and otherwise we'd be spending our entire time saying like, we don't know, whatever. So we're committing to that. That already is very un-Basecampy to commit to specific features in ahead of times. But yeah, we're gonna do that. So now, of course, I forgot what I was gonna answer.
I'll take one real quick. Someone just curious about like how we got hey.com and how much we paid for it. I can't share how much we paid for it, but I wrote the whole story up about how we acquired it because it wasn't ours. If you just Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever search you use, how we acquired hey.com, you should find the answer. I emailed the owner of it back in June of 2018. So that's when we started building Hey. Prior to that, actually internally it was called Haystack because we owned haystack.com, and that's what it was going to be. And to another question someone asked earlier, like, were custom domains planned from the start? Like, I don't really know, but once we were able to acquire hey.com, we knew that was like, we acquired that because we wanted people to have that email address. So we always have been running it on basecamp.com as well, but I also have a personal hey.com address, and David does as well, and everyone at Basecamp does. So once we went down that road, it was pretty clear that we wanted to make sure hey.com was something we focused on because it was expensive. And it took about almost 2 years, well, not quite, about what, a year and a half to get. A lot of emails back and forth, but I wrote the whole story up so you can check it out. But we can't share the price. That's part of the NDA. And so that's forever a secret.
I've been using emoji to symbolize the price, and it's usually like money bags like the whole way down because we're like, this is the most we've ever spent on something like that. And at the time, funny anecdote, Jason was so convinced that I would have thought that was outrageous criminal amount to spend on a domain. He was like, I don't know, if you don't do it, I'm just gonna buy it myself. And I was like, dude, I think it's a good idea because the thing is, like the domain actually really does matter. And I think it is a key part of why people are excited for Hey, that like, this is a great email address, david@hey.com. Like that it sounds cool. It's easy to say. It's easy to say on the phone. It's quick to write. Like it matters. Like you don't really want to just say that I am like Danish dude 79 at gmail.com, right? Like, yeah. I don't know, maybe you do. Whoever has Danish dude 79 at gmail.com, no offense intended. But clearly there's just some interest in the domain itself. It's an important part of the product. And I think that's part of realizing that products are so many things. Their features, their opinions, their marketing, and sometimes their domain. That's part of the deal. That's part of what we're selling. I think that's part of why people are so excited about getting just the right one for them. Right? So that's part of it. One thing I just wanted to say on the question of like, what are you going to make and how are you going to make it? And can you get a roadmap for us? Beyond no, because we don't have one, is that the process we follow at Basecamp is called Shape Up. And it's available at basecamp.com/shapeup. One word. It's our software development methodology. It explains how we prioritize things, and it explains how we develop in 6-week cycles. So right now, we're in launch cycle where nothing is actually scheduled or shaped. We're just reacting. Next cycle in about 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Whenever we get up on it, when this cycle is over, we're going to go back into cycle work where we sort of schedule the things we want to do, but just for those next 6 weeks. Doesn't mean we can't still have, commitments like we do, like we got to do custom domains this year. We got to do Hey for Work this year. But in terms of actually scheduling, what does that mean? What are the features? We use Shape Up. We work in these 6-week cycles. That's why we don't have these broad roadmaps, because that's just not how we work.
I'm looking through some questions here. Let's see. A lot of questions about what we will do and when we will do them. So I have to skip over them just because we don't know, we truly don't know. I will say this, let me just say this actually. One of the things that we want to do is continue to be weird. We want to continue to build unusual, differentiated features into Hey. Part of the brand of Hey is different. It's different at every single level, and it needs to stay that way for quite a while. One of the really hard things about product development is if you put something out there in the world, in a world where people are used to a certain way, like email has been the same forever, basically. It's very hard easy is the wrong word, but it's easier to do something behind the scenes, like build what we want, which is what we did to release 1.0, because you don't have to listen to people's feedback, right? It's easier not to listen to people's feedback. Let's just be honest. Like, I think everyone who knows who's doing work, like, it's easier not to have someone over your shoulder telling you this and telling you that and changing your mind and whatever. It's just easier. But once you release something, you have hundreds of thousands of people giving you their opinions, which is a wonderful source of information and insight and perspective. And that's super, super valuable. But one of the really hard things is to not begin to backfill early on with all the stuff people wanted from what they're used to. Because what people are bringing with them, and everyone included, is expectations from what they're used to and habits from what they have, or the habits they already have. And there's absolutely some value in some of that. There's some reasons why certain things work the way they work. But what can be really tricky in product development is putting a hold on some of that and continuing to do the things that made the product interesting in the first place. So part of what's interesting about Hey is that it is radically different and takes very different perspectives on a bunch of things. So the next set of features we put out, whatever they might be, they might surprise some people, because some people might say, why would you spend time working on that? It doesn't do X, Y, and Z. Or like, why would you make it do this when it doesn't do that? Like, part of it is because there's a strategy here, which is to continue to differentiate and make things interesting. We will eventually get to a bunch of things that sort of maybe are considered table stakes by the broader community, but we want to keep focusing on what's unique, what's interesting. We want people to still smile every time something new comes out. Oh, that's a new take on that. I hadn't thought about that, or never even considered that that would be part of an email app. Like, we have an idea, which I can't share right now, but like, that has nothing to do with email, but also everything to do with email. It's something that hasn't been done before, has never been attached to an email product before. And we want to do that, even though it's not the most important next thing, like if you're really laying things out on a priority basis based on like feedback, but it's something we think is important for the product and important to move the product forward in different ways. So it's really, for anyone who's building products out there, the hardest period of time after launch, I think, is the first month or so, because everyone now will tell you what they want it to do based on their previous experiences doing that thing before, unless you're building something that has never been done before, and then everyone's just like bewildered. But if you're doing something that's been done before, there's a lot of pressure to make it more like the other things. And that takes a lot, it just takes discipline and pause to go, these are all really good ideas. And yes, we do need that. And yes, we do need that. But we're just going to hold on for a minute, let the dust settle a little bit. And then we can clear our minds when we're not feeling like we're anxious to please every possible issue that people bring up. So it's a challenging time. It's really hard and I'm sure people who built products understand this, but it's hard in general, even as a customer on the outside of other people's products, to understand that like some time needs to go by after the launch so the company can catch their breath and decide where to go next. And that where to go next is not always where things have been in the past. But if you want to keep pushing it forward, you got to make new things. So that's kind of the approach we're going to be taking.
Yeah, one example I've been using for this, although I need to find a new example now, I think, is the Apple Watch. We're trying not to sort of harp on the Apple issue since so much have been said about that. It didn't show time until like
5th generation.
5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
5th generation, right? Like 5 years into development, it didn't show time unless you did this crazy exaggerated move. And I thought that was just a great example of like a lot of things launch and they're like, do not for everyone in V1, right? They slowly become broader and broader and broader, and then more and more people can feel like it fits into their life. But it's very rare that a V1 of something that does something new comes out and everyone goes like, oh, that's perfect. Oh, that does everything I wanted both because it's perfect because it's different from everything I had before, but also it does exactly everything I want. Like that's not a thing. What usually happens is something new comes out like Hey, that's really different in a bunch of ways where the people who can or appreciate those differences go like, you know what? Those differences are worth some trade-offs. I'm not going to get everything I had before with whatever, Gmail or whatever other product I used before. But these new things are so interesting that I'm going to be okay that like the product doesn't do X for a while. So I think that's something we're going to try to just stick to. And also just, I mean, it's just, we've run at the red line for 2 weeks. I am personally completely, utterly smashed. I'm trying to think back if there's ever been a time in the history of Basecamp where we have worked like this. I don't think so. I mean, I don't know if it's ironic, but it's illustrating that we just published a book like 1.5 years ago called It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work, where we talk about like, hey, we've been running for 20 years. We've had our emergencies. We've had our crises at Basecamp. And sometimes like you needed to do something. We've never had a 2-week crisis where everything was just all in like this. And you know what? I can tell you, it's exhausting. It really is. I mean, I know no one's interested in the sob story from 2 founders of a successful email product, but that's just the facts. That's why we can't do everything right now. Is like, we're just completely blasted. I feel like I just want to lay with the head down for like 2 weeks and do nothing, stare into a pillow or the wall or something. So that's kind of like the timing of it. Again, we're 50 people. We try really hard. We try to be responsive. And Jason and I have been working the Twitters like mad people, partly because we were mad, partly because we are mad, but also in just completely unsustainable ways that can't carry forward. That's why we started at Hey Hey for people to direct all the requests to us. I said not everything flows through Jason and I's Twitter accounts because no one can keep this up. Or maybe they can in Silicon Valley. I don't know. There's a lot of people who are all about like, whoa, I work 10, 12-hour days all the time for years. I was like, I've worked some 12-hour days in the last few weeks. I'm not gonna make that my life. Do you know what? I would rather than not do this than if the last 2 weeks were like, oh, that's just your life now. Look forward to that for the next 5 years. I'd be like, yeah, nope.
Yep.
Nope.
I want to get to this one, which I think maybe we'll go another half hour. Max, that'll be 90 minutes. Are you free, David? Is that good?
Fine.
Okay. So here's an interesting question. When would you say that you've taken on Gmail and that the philosophy behind Hey has been a complete success? We are not, I think this is a really great question, fundamental great question, which is if you compare yourself to another company and define your success based on whether or not you've beaten them, taken them on, whatever, you're just in a bad spot to begin with. I think like there's a famous quote, it's been attributed to a whole bunch of people. I don't know who said it. I'll say Mark Twain. That's who said everything apparently. Is comparison is the death of joy. And I absolutely believe that. This is not about taking on anybody. This is about building something that we believe is excellent and that we want other people to see to and use to because we think it's really going to change people's daily habits. Like people are in email every single day. And if we can make that better, that's meaningful. I'm not saying we're changing the world, none of that stuff. But we can help your day. If we can save you an extra half hour, 45 minutes, an hour a day, whatever, or even 15, 20 minutes a day, like that's an improvement, a real improvement. And you do that day in and day out, it actually becomes an investment in yourself. And I think that's what we're aiming for here. This is not about beating Gmail. Gmail is 1.5 million accounts, billion. 1.5 billion accounts. We'll never get there. I don't want to get there. We couldn't run that company here. We can't do that. We don't want to do that. So success for us has always looked the same way, which is, would we want to do this same thing again? Now, the last 2 weeks, we wouldn't really want to do again. But looking back, you got to reflect. You got to go, let's shoot ahead 6 months and look back on that. Like, would we want to do those 6 months again? I bet we would. And that if we say yes to that like the last 2 years, which we've been working on Hey, yes, we would love to do that again. So that is our success. It is not measuring against anyone else's yardstick, anyone else's success, dollars, numbers, none of that stuff. That doesn't get you anywhere. You got to really want to do the thing again. And if you do, then it was successful. So that's our general take on that. And again, we know we can't beat Gmail. Like Gmail they own 50% of the US email market. We're never going to get that. We don't want that. We couldn't have that. So if that was our only measure, we are going to fall down every day and be exhausted doing so. Not worth it. Like David said, I'd rather quit. I don't want to do that. That's not the business I want to run. So anyway, that's our general take on success, measuring up, comparisons. I'd try to avoid them at all costs.
And it also flows into then the products and pricing decisions. Like, hey, is $99 a year. There's just a bunch of people, they're not going to pay for email, no matter what we do, right? And I've already heard a bunch of comments come back, but you know what, if it was $20 a year, then you'd get more users. If it was $5 a year, then you'd get even more still. If you did a free version that was just ad supported, just in certain ways, it would be even more users. Yeah, no thanks. Not interested in a billion users, not interested in everything, not interested in running an ad supported product. So we make these decisions consciously that limits the potential. Some people would say the ambition of the product, but our ambition is, I mean, obviously I think this because this is what we're doing, but is focused on like making the best product, not getting the most people, not beating everyone, not dominating anything. We can have, I mean, if we're, I was going to say, and then I caught myself. I was going to say, if we were 1% of the US email market,
no.
Right? Like it sounds like the first slide of a novice VC pitch. I don't even care about the 1%. I don't even know what it factors out to in percent. If we can make a great product that's profitable, sustainable, with a great bunch of people working at Basecamp at Hey, that customers who choose to pay for email really like, success. It doesn't take that much. I'd argue we've already probably crossed the threshold where, hey, just given the 125,000 people have signed up, it's sustainable. As in, we can continue to make the product, and there's enough customers for like us to not go like, well, we can't afford to do it or whatever. Still have a lot to figure out, but that's, I mean, we're already there. So.
Let's see. You want to take the next one, David? You want to find? I'm just kind of scrolling through here.
Sure.
Sorry for the big pause, the boring pause. We need some elevator music right about now.
We should have a slick production here, so that we don't have to both answer and read the tweets at the same time. I mean, a lot of the tweets are, will you do this feature and when will you do it? Or and Jason sort of already covered that.
Let's see. Well, how about this? Let's do some live questions, like real live questions. You know what we've asked or what we've answered. You know what's been asked. Just tweet right now. We got Twitter open. Let's do this kind of more live here. So we'll just take questions as they actually come in right now. Student discounts, extending trials. These are things that we'd like to explore down the road around discounts. For example, with Basecamp, we give Basecamp away for teachers or to teachers. We've done first responder discounts and actually comps for first responders on COVID-19. We've done a whole bunch of things like that. Basecamp's been around for a long time. We just decided to do those things recently over the past few years. So, you know, there's just so many things we can do right now. And when you launch something new, I want to see if I can make this point broadly. When you launch something new, it behooves you and everyone else to have a relatively small surface area. Like if you have multiple tiers and multiple prices, for example, like this is the first product we've ever launched, I think, maybe, that's been one price. Is that right, David? Does that seem like it's probably about right? I don't remember us, maybe Basecamp Breeze, which is something we did for a little bit, but most things have always been like multiple tiers. Hey is at $99 a year. That's what we have right now, right? And that just makes it clear, even though it's not a good fit for certain markets and certain people, we totally understand that, absolutely. But when you're putting something out there, you want to make sure that you can hold the whole thing in your head. There are very few conditions and conditional situations where, well, in this case, it's this, in that case, it's that, because then other people have to reason about it. It becomes difficult for customer service to explain things to people. You have to build a lot more back-end systems to indicate which level someone's at. And then given what level that they're at in terms of subscription rate, perhaps, maybe they have different features or it just, everything gets so complicated so quickly. And when you're doing something new, it's best to keep things as tight as you possibly can initially. So you can hold it all. If you think about this thing as an object, like how heavy would it be is how I like to, like how heavy is Hey? Like, I think we could hold it. I think we could hold it right now. If it had a bunch of different prices and a bunch more features at the start and a bunch of different conditions and all sorts of like mail rules and all the things we talked about, it'd be much, much, much harder to carry and for other people to hold and to pass on from support person to support person. Like the knowledge that would have to be transferred across people would be so much harder for training and all these different things. So yes, we would like to add some more prices perhaps down the road. The business version is not going to be $99 a year total. Like we're going to come up with different pricing for that as well. But for the most part, version 1 should be as tight as possible for a whole bunch of those reasons.
One thing that has sort of come up, I don't know if there's a direct question on this, is like, how long did this take to make? Did you shape up for the whole thing? And I think I'm going to zoom out a little bit and say, like, we've been working on Hey for 10 years. We've actually have, I think, at least 3 different internal projects that we started that never turned into a shipping product that all deeply informed Hey. We had something called Sidecar, which was an idea using email for delegation. We played around with High-Rise 2 for a long time. We had something called Glengarry around the sales process for that. We built another thing called Chestnut that was also basically, we've been walking around this problem for about 10 years. And for a long time, we felt like we can't do an email service. That's just not, we're not the kind of organization that can take on that problem. I remember someone pulled up a interview with me and Jason Kalkanis from, I think maybe 2010 or something like that, where he goes like, things are going well with Basecamp. When are you going to take on like something big like Google and Gmail? And I go back like, we never want to do something like email because that looks really hard. And it's true, it is really hard. And the reason we're making Hey now is because we could. We have 56 people. We sent like, I don't know, 5 million emails a day through Basecamp, different notifications. We've built up the organizational fortitude, skill set, ambition to take this ludicrous mission on of launching a major new email service, taking on, again, I know we didn't use that, taking on Gmail in the sense that for the people who are interested in what we're doing, it's a realistic alternative. Now, no way would we have had that level of ambition 10 years ago. We would have gone like, that's too hard. And you know what, if I know now what we just went through in about 2 weeks, maybe I would have gone 2 years ago. No, let's not do that. That's too hard. But it's also one of those things where you're like, we're in this moment right now. Big tech is gobbling up almost everything, right? Email is one of the last frontiers where someone actually could do it, right? Good luck launching a new social network against, I don't know, Zuckerberg and Facebook. I hope someone does. I would go like, yeah, that's too hard. I'm not going to do that. Email felt like it had the opening very difficult, but there's still this sense like someone still can email. We can still email Gmail, right? Like Google doesn't own that garden. You can still do it. You can send an email from anything else. This is the magic of the web. This is the whole thing that's been motivating my indignant rants for 2 weeks about Apple, is that like I grew up on the web. I grew up with email. These were open platforms. You didn't have to ask anyone for permission. You could build the best thing that you wanted to build, put it out there, put a price on it, and if people liked it, they could just buy it, right? Now we've gone into this second phase where big tech owns so much, and to get on the iPhone, you have to go through Apple and have to beg them for leniency to get onto the platform. And that's why I felt like we had to. It's almost like an obligation of us that we should use the talents that we had built up over the past 20 years to tackle something like email, before email is just an app that Google allows you to install.
Which has been the way a lot of people have been tackling email, which is building clients. There's a bunch of wonderful clients that sit on top of Gmail or Outlook or you name it. Really good clients. But the thing is that if you're on top of someone else's platform, you can only really innovate around the margins. You can't really change fundamental principles about the product and the idea because you don't control that level of it. So when we set out to do Hey, it was never intended to be a client. It was an email service. We want to be the email provider. That was really critical because then we could do a whole bunch of things that other people can't do. And it was really, really hard to do a bunch of this stuff. And we're going to be writing up over the next year or many years, a bunch of tech articles, design articles about like what we had to do, what we went through. In fact, I'm hoping next week we're going to share Jonas, who's our lead designer, he took screenshots of the whole process. And so we're going to share one screenshot from every month, starting, I think it was in May of 2018, of what hay, although it wasn't even called that back then, looked like. And you'll see some wacky shit, some stuff that you look back on and go, that was horrible. And other stuff you look back and go, that was really interesting. I wish we actually kept that. Like, there's a lot of stuff here. So it's very hard. So on the design side, it was very hard. On the tech side, it was very hard. Rendering emails is incredibly difficult. The amount of work that had to be done by a couple people here to make emails even renderable, to look at them in a way where you would reliably be able to know that this is going to look okay. It's so hard. It's so incredibly hard to do well. And we still haven't nailed it. Like, it's not completely nailed yet. We still have more work to do there. So it's really hard. So well, let me get a couple things I saw came in. Go ahead, David.
Okay. I was going to take two here. One was the environmental impact of hay. This is actually something we've been working on a bunch lately. Jane, our data analyst, have been working on a way for not just hay, but all of Basecamp to first become carbon neutral, and then for us to do with what I think it was Microsoft, or maybe it was Shopify, who announced that they were essentially going to find a way to clean up everything that they had done in the past. That we've committed to doing both of those things internally, and I guess maybe on this call now, not a public sort of commitment here in the sense that, like, we haven't written it down, but this is what we want to do. Basecamp and hay should be carbon neutral. Now,
and not
that
in
is
2030. Now, or is
right,
now
exactly now, not in
yeah.
like 10, 20 years, right? This is the climate emergency is now. And we've had a lot of discussions about this internally. Like, how do we do meetup? How do we deal with flying? How do we buy our services from, like, whether it's AWS or others? How do we offset things? And thankfully, a bunch of people have done work on this in the industry. Shopify has done a bunch of work. We've talked to them about our calculations. What is our carbon budget remediation? How can we do something about it? Do we offset? What are good offsets? Like, there's a lot of people selling offsets. Far fewer of them sell things that are actually credible, that's not just for PR, right? So we really want to do that, really committed to doing that. I hope we can have something. I think Jane was actually going to write it. Now I'm committing Jane in public here. I'm not sure she's just,
she wrote it up already.
I didn't square that off. So this has the disclaimer, wasn't squared off. She was going to write that up for SVN. We're going to put out an article about all the work we've done to figure this out. And then one other thing, there was a question here about, so it's been crazy at work for the past 2 weeks. How do you recalibrate and get back to normal for our culture? Super important. We keep saying, like, you are the habits that you make. And we're just on the cusp of getting some really nasty habits built, where, like, just running at the red line is normal, that, like, people do work 10 or 12-hour days, that's normal. No, it's not going to be normal. It's not normal that I'm going to respond on everything on Twitter in like 5 seconds. That's not normal. And we're just at that cusp. So the internal idea here is, like, next week's got to be transition week. Next week is when we go from, like, this was an emergency, this was a crisis, now we're ramping back. If you have more work on your plate than you can make happen in a normal week, we got to figure something out, either because we need more people, we need to reschedule or reshuffle the plate. We got to get back to normal, because I think this is the problem that a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves in. They start out working these 80-hour weeks. They're absolutely crushing. And then they work those for years. And now that's life. Now that's just life. That's just how you do it. Even when it's not necessary anymore, you've built that habit. This is just life. I don't want this to be my life. We've gone over that topic repeatedly. I don't want this to be the life of anyone at Basecamp. We have to get back to calm. We have to get back to 40 hours a week is enough. 8 hours a day is plenty. And we will do the work, great work that we can do within that. And we will work on all the other things, making sure that people have long stretches of uninterrupted time. But this is not a new normal.
And the reminder is that we built hay that way.
Right. Yes.
So we can do this again. We've done this. This is how we work.
Yes.
We just need to get back to it. And the transition doesn't mean it's going to happen next week, but we're going to begin to slide back into good habits. This is a good question that says, the company's focus now has 2 major products. Are you concerned with the context switching costs in the future? So we used to have many products. And then about 5 years ago, we committed just to being Basecamp. And now we've got 2 things. We got Basecamp and hay. I think this is going to make both products significantly better. we've already begun work on Basecamp 4, which is going to come out next year. Basecamp 3 is the current version. Basecamp 4 is going to be significantly better because of Hey. The ideas, the design, the point of view, the things we're learning right now, the things we know that are important, the interface, all that stuff, the tech, it's all going to be better because of Hey. And then when we build Basecamp 4, we're going to learn new things again, because the only time we seem to learn new things is when we build something brand new. And we're going to build something brand new with Basecamp, and we're going to bring some of that stuff back into Hey. So we're kind of internally calling it like TikTok development, back and forth, back and forth. And we're going to kind of let both products inform the other product and really help us work. Because the thing is, every time we do something new and we start from scratch, we come up with new interface ideas, we come up with new technical ideas, we come up with new approaches, new points of view. And it's very hard to come up with that if you're just working on the same thing over and over and over. Sometimes if you really start over, like we usually typically do with Basecamp, you can get to some of that, but there's still so much legacy attached to reworking something you've already done compared to starting something new. So for example, I think it's been 5 years. It has been 5 years. We built a product called Know Your Company, which is now called Know Your Team. And that product actually informed the design of Basecamp 3. And in some ways, even Hey initially, in some, we had this like card style. We'll share all these interface designs later, but like had all these like kind of card style things going on and timelines. This is all based on work we did when we did Know Your Company. And had we not built that product, we would not have had the same ideas we ended up with Basecamp 3 and ultimately with Hey. And so Hey is going to inform Basecamp 4. So I think it's been healthy. It's going to be healthy for us to go back and forth. So there are costs and trade-offs, no question. We can't put the whole company on one thing at a time for many years at a time and like leave something else sitting there for a while. So we're going to end up splitting teams. We're probably going to hire another product team. So we have another team. We'll kind of be working on both products for a while. So there's some trade-offs to the company size, because we like to keep the company as small as we can, which we're going to have to grow a bit here now. But we think it's all worth it, and it's going to be much better in the end. All right, we got like 10 minutes. You want to pick up a couple more?
Yeah.
How about the inbox zero thing, David? Someone's
exactly.
Like,
that's what I was
good.
Hey. Because as my wife calls it, she's Team Adam. Adam is a Avenir. I think Adam Avenir, I think is correct, has been on Twitter about the inbox zero thing, about whether previously seen is shown all the time. And my wife has sent me just a litany of iMessages saying like, I'm Team Adam, make Jason realize this, about how we deal with it. But first, let's zoom out a little bit. Why did we come to this position that like inbox zero is not actually where you want to be? So as I said, I've been using, or I was using Gmail until like a year ago or something when we switched to Hey, and I'd been using it for like 16 years since it came out. And I was on that inbox wagon, right? Where I was so proud that like I was so organized and I was so quick that I would get back to everything. And either I'd be at inbox zero, I'd have like 5 to 10 things, right? But as I said earlier, like it's really disruptive for your mental space to do that. And getting to inbox zero is not like just seeing that empty screen. I get the adrenaline or dopamine hit that you get from that. Like, oh man, I'm so good at email. Oh, I'm really, you know what? That's not the thing I want to be the best at in the world, is to like just email. Like I want to do other things that require me not to answer email all the time. So the concept that we came up with, this idea of the river, where there's like, why are people feeling bad about email all the time? And inbox zero as a concept makes people feel bad about email all the time. The number of times I've seen someone sort of show their screen and they're like, they have 10,567 unread emails and they're like apologetic. They're like, I'm sorry, I know I'm like kind of disorganized, but like, hey, this is email, this is just what. Email should not be making people feel bad about that. Email is just something that flows. You can't do all of it. You can't read everything. You can't process all of it, and you shouldn't have to, right? So that was been one of the main design criteria for Basecamp, and why we came up with the screener is like, you get a ton of email you just shouldn't be getting. So Hey is different in the sense that like, I get a 10th, a 20th, the email into my inbox that I used to get. Maybe it's even less than it. Maybe it's 100th. Like I just opened my inbox this morning, right? I had 5 new messages in my inbox. That didn't used to be a thing. I would open up Gmail in the morning. I'd have like 100 things. And some of them would be ads, and some of them would be newsletters, and some of them would be super important stuff I had to get back to. But I had to wade through the whole thing to get to inbox 0. So I spent like 2 hours on that in the morning, reading newsletters or other things. Again, I love newsletters. That's why we built the feed. I want to read newsletters. I don't want to do it all at the same time. The mental task switching, trying to do that at the same time, processing everything in one go, not good, not nice. So I've come around. I used to be a proud inbox 0 person, right? The flip side of people being sort of embarrassed about having a lot of unread emails was that people would be really proud when they were like, oh man, inbox 0. If you search on Twitter, I'm sure you'll actually find some like, oh man, I got inbox 0, and I'll tweet like the Gmail person on the beach or something is the illustration you get. And I realize now that that was bad. That was not a good way to do email, and there was nothing to be proud about. Email is a river that flows. What we build is a dam, and that dam generates a bunch of energy, and it holds things back, but it allows you to control the flow. You know what? You just need a bit of it. That bit is good, and you deal with it. Like those 5 emails that hit my inbox this morning, they're actually important. I totally need to get back to most of them. And then a bunch of things hit my screener, and I dealt with that later and whatever, and that was fine. But inbox 0 is not good. Let the river flow. But sorry, I got to get back to Team Adam here. Otherwise, Jamie is going to roast me, my wife. And Team Adam's point is perhaps not even any of the stuff that I said about it. It's simply like I don't want to see previously seen. And I think Jason and I is going to talk. We're going to talk on Monday about like how can we keep integrity of this idea that inbox 0 is not good. It's not something you should be striving for. Email is a river, while still appreciating that some people's rivers flow faster than others, and maybe there are things we can do to make all of it happen. We'll see. But that's the inbox 0 spiel.
Such a cool idea for this. I can't wait to tell you about it Monday. I came up with it last night. I think you're going to dig it. It's kind of a good solution, but it's weird because I'm trying to filter everything through. It's got to be a little bit different here versus just like a hide button, which is like, that's not really interesting. So I'm excited to show you Monday.
I can't.
But also the interesting, to get back to the other point about 2 products, Basecamp 3 customers will probably be very familiar with what the inbox looks like in Hey, because it's based on Basecamp. Basecamp's Hey menu, we have a Hey menu in Basecamp. And at the top, it's new for you, I think it's called. And then the back, before it's like previous notifications at the bottom or whatever it's called. We changed the name of it because we don't have notifications on by default with Hey. But that pattern is something we had already determined and already come up with in another product. We basically took that, expanded it, we changed it, of course. Now we've got reply later and set aside and some different behaviors, but conceptually, Basecamp informed Hey. And so for those of you who think Hey is interesting, you got to see the source. That's Basecamp. Basecamp 3 is wildly different than any other project management tool that exists, any other team communication tool that exists. And a lot of the ideas in Hey are born from that. And when we get back to 4, a lot of those ideas in 4 are going to be born from Hey. So like, this is a good thing to have a couple of things to go back and forth with, which inform each other. All right, we got 1 minute. I don't know. Is there anything?
Let me pick one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Migration. So I've heard this from a lot of people. Like, hey,
yeah.
I've been on Gmail for like 16 years or whatever, like I had, right? How do I go to Hey? Like all my email is in Gmail. I had furious arguments with Jason over this. We have to have import out the box because otherwise no one's going to switch to it. And this was while I was still using Gmail. And I was thinking like, how can I switch email if all my email are in Gmail? And Jason thankfully held the line here and like, no, Hey is a fresh start. And I'm like, this is nonsense. This doesn't make any sense. And I grudged and I kept trying to find the angles that I was going to convince Jason like that he was wrong. And then I switched entirely to Hey. This was around the time when we were sort of using both things at the same time. Hey was still buggy enough that occasionally we had to go back to Gmail to use it. Then I switched over to Hey full time. And I started making note of like, how often did I go back into the archives? How often did I have to find something? And I did go back into the archives. Like once every 3 to 5 weeks, I'd go like, oh, this email was actually something, I need to find this email. And I'm like, wow, that is a lot less than I thought. I mean, I literally had, I think, 250,000 emails in Gmail. And it was so rare that I felt the need to go back that I just found that profoundly interesting. And then when we built exporting around mboxes. So mboxes is a general purpose format. You can at any time export all your emails from Hey into the mbox format. And Gmail does something similar. It's quite slow if you have a lot of emails. In Gmail, it took me like 3 days to export. But so I exported all these mbox or these emails out because I wanted to get off Gmail. And now I have them sort of locally on my machine. It's this, I think it's 40 gigabytes or something of 16 years of emails. And they're actually really easy to search like that. The Mail app on the Mac, you can just pull in an mbox account. It chucks for a while if you have 40 gigabytes, but you get it in and you can just search. And I've done that in the past 4 months. I think I've pulled up maybe 3 emails. We vastly overestimate, I think, the value of old. We feel like we have to take it with us. And I know some people have furious debates about this and like they really cherish it. And that's why I think the mbox format is great. It's like it's a shoebox where you go like, these are just things I want to keep. I don't know if I'm ever going to get back to it. Maybe I'm going to back to it in like 40 years and I'm going to take the shoebox out and I'm going to go through it. But right now it's going to go up on this shelf. I just know I have it. So Hey is a fresh start. Do you know how often you get a fresh start in email with a new email address that's like empty and not full of everything else? Once every 16 years. That's the answer. So maybe in 16 years, something else is going to come out and you're going to take your shoeboxes out of Hey. But this is a rare opportunity and I would welcome people to embrace it. Again, pull your stuff out of Gmail or wherever you have it. Put the mbox file on your desktop. You just know it's there. It's going to give you some security that you didn't throw it all out. But then also give a thought of like, do you actually want 16 years of email around? Like, what does that do to your privacy and your security? Like, would I want someone to get a hold of 16 years of my email? I don't think so. I probably sent some embarrassing emails over the past 16 years. And not because like, that's just life. That's what people do, right? You sent a bunch of stuff. Do you want that liability around? And it's one of the things we've been thinking about. It almost made the cut for V1 of Hey, which was this idea of retention. A lot of corporations already have retention rules where email after like a year, unless you specifically set them aside and mark them, they're just going to be auto-deleted. And we thought, like, do you know what? There's some interesting ideas here. We should think about like how that could actually apply here. Because when I was exporting those 40 gigabytes, I went like, one hand, this is really cool. I get all my emails. On the other hand, like, this is kind of like, why does Gmail have 16 years of my emails? I don't feel comfortable with this. So,
in fact, when we switched off Gmail for business too, many of us just decided to delete all of our business email. Yes. So I did. Yes. I didn't take any of it with me. It's all gone. And you know what? If I need something, someone else will have it. And if they don't have it, it's gone. Like, that's just the way it is. I don't want to keep that all around forever. And also, to your point about the 16 years of personal email, like, it's funny, I found a notebook that I had from college with a bunch of poetry that I'd written back in college. And it's so fucking embarrassing to read that shit right now. And it's like, that's what your email is from 16 years ago. It's your poetry from college. Yeah, there might be something in there that's great, but most of it is fucking embarrassing. You really don't want it around anymore. So anyway, fresh start, clean moment. And this is kind of, let's wrap it up here, I guess. This is the other thing that's wrong with email today, which is why we built this screener, which is that if you've had the same email address for 16 years or even 5 or whatever, it's not yours anymore. The world owns it. It's everywhere. It's been bought and sold and traded. It's been posted online where you don't want it. You make a donation to one group, they give it away to 15 others. You buy this product, it's given away to 16 others. Like, your email address is everywhere, which is why you have to deal with this onslaught of crap all the time. And it's so wonderful just to draw a line every 16 years. That's a long time. And say, like, I'm going to start over here. It's like moving into a new house and not bringing all your college furniture with you. Just like, no, I'm going to buy some new stuff finally. I finally have the money or have the time or whatever to buy something new and start fresh. It's hard. There's sentimental value in a lot of this stuff. But like David said, you can carry that with you. You don't need to look at it all the time. You can carry it with you so you have it, so you know you have it, so you're comfortable there. But moving forward, you can start with a clean slate, forward in new stuff that comes into your old address so you don't lose the stuff that's happening right now that might be relevant. But other than that, you just get to move forward from a fresh start. It's a wonderful way. It's a new path. So anyway, this was fun. I hope people enjoyed it. I know we didn't get to all the questions. There were so many questions. And again, like, we're overwhelmed by the response so far. We've never launched anything nearly this exciting before. and we're still recoiling from it all, and hopefully we get back to normal soon here. But thank you so much for your interest so far. We'll probably do some more of these live Q&As and walkthroughs, maybe some design ones, maybe some technical ones as the weeks go on, and we'll be sharing a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and also looking forward to bringing you some new features for those who use Hey. Some new cool stuff is in the wings when we get back to it. So thanks so much, and we will both see you later. Take care.
All right, late.